Stonehenge is expected to have taken around 1,500 years to complete and been added to by many different tribes. Around 3,500 BC, Stonehenge was built in the Salisbury Plains. Those who lived here cleared out the surrounding woods for other stone or wooden structures and burial mounds as far back as 4000 BC. The community who started to build Stonehenge may have lived here over several millennia. This community would have cleared out the forests and the woods, creating the Salisbury Plain as we know today. The people of the Mesolithic period erected pine posts near what would be Stonehenge. It's unknown what these posts were used for, but they could have been similar to totem poles, scaffolding, or have other practical uses. This deforestation over several millennia led to the creation of the Salisbury Plains, which would be the site of Stonehenge. In the 1960s, a large car park was built over these post holes. However, the 1,000-year-old holes can still be seen today. A large bank was dug on the Salisbury Plains and decorated with white chalk that was dug up on the site. This ditch also bridged along the general direction of the sun. A ditch was also dug around 2 meters deep. This cannot be easily seen today as it slowly eroded over time. Inside, 56 holes were dug, which could have held up possible timber posts that have since rotted away. These holes are now referred to as the Aubrey holes, as John Aubrey discovered them in the 1700s. Many timber posts were also placed in the causeway, used for observation sites or as simple guidelines. A stone called the heel stone was also placed at this time, and there are signs of another similar stone that has since disappeared. These stones are hard to date, and they may have arrived as late as Phase 3. Mike Parker Pearson and William Hawley erected bone fragments from 63 individuals that were buried in the Aubrey holes from the years 1920 to 2013. There were around an equal amount of male and females, and there was also a few children. White chalk was used, possibly to identify these as graves, but this was pushed underground with the placing of the bluestones at a later date. Not many artefacts are found at Stonehenge, such as pottery. This is because Stonehenge is a clean site, meaning it was kept as a special place. Not much rustle and bustle happened here, compared to other busier sites. Around 3000 BC, a large amount of wooden posts were added. The ones to the northeast may have served as astronomical measurements, or they may have just been there to guide visitors to the centre. Phase 2 of Stonehenge is the hardest to date, as much of it was made out of wood, which obviously doesn't last long. These wooden posts overlapped, which means they wouldn't have all been placed there at the same time. When trying to make out patterns, it seems like there's a round shape in the centre with a pathway leading to it. Not all these posts were the same size, some were as large as tree trunks. A pottery technique called grooved ware was also used a little during this time, but we don't know what it was for and where it was used. It could have been used for construction, or it could have just been used for simple things such as beakers and drinking. Phase 3 is where the iconic look of Stonehenge starts to form. This is because stones started to be incorporated with the build, with the first stones arriving around 2600 BC. The first of these were the bluestones. These bluestones came all the way from Wales in the Preseli Hills, 150 miles away, and this is for an unknown reason. This would have taken a great deal of effort as only primitive tools were around during this time, and it's still undecided how exactly they were transported. Some theorise that they was moved nearer to the site by a glacier from the Irish Sea. However, there is no evidence for this. Small sandstone blocks may have been used as lintels to painstakingly transport the blocks that weighed more than 2 tons. This would have been done by dragging one sandstone block onto another, lifting it up, and then redoing this over and over again. Another way they could have transported them is by rolling them on timber poles. This method is also proven to work, as demonstrated in ancient times in China, Japan, and India. The reason why the stones came all the way from Wales is another question no one knows the answer to. The stones could have been taken by force, or as an act of tribute. As stated before, they could have also been used as a unifying factor from tribes coming together. Another theory is that these blue stones were originally a part of another stone circle, and that the two stone circles were combined into one. There is some evidence to support this theory, as there was another stone circle in the north of Wales, Warn Morn, near Pwllheli. This site may have also been the home of the altar stone for a short period of time, as patterns of the ground match the heel stone perfectly. They may have also been brought with the migration of a tribe moving into this new area, as the stones were in some way important to them or legitimised their ancestral identity. But wherever the stones were moved, it would have been an incredibly hard journey to make, with enormously heavy stones. The blue stones were placed in a horseshoe pattern, which would have taken a huge amount of effort to pull off. The 4 station stones and the altar stone were also added around the same time. The duo and trio entrance stones were added, and the entrance itself was made wider. The entrance part of this build was seemingly unfinished. Some of the stones were removed, and some of the holes refilled. Around this time, Dorrington Walls was also built, using the same stones and materials used at Stonehenge. Dorrington Walls was a site filled with many houses for people to live in, but has since been lost to time. It's also unknown why Dorrington Walls was built. It may have been given to people who came to worship, or just the site built for the workers who worked on Stonehenge. Dorrington Walls was also much larger than Stonehenge, and built more like a miniature village. Many animal remains were found at Dorrington Walls, meaning this could have been used for farming. However, many of these animals would come from across the whole of the British Isles, meaning that this could have been part of a wider trading network, or that people were bringing animals with them from long distances, either as a way of sacrifice or just for food. These animals had plenty of meat on their bones when buried, meaning these people could afford to throw it away, which was unheard of during this time period. Around 2600 BC, the enormous sarsen stones came to Stonehenge from a quarry 15 miles to the north. These would replace the bluestones, which were either moved into storage or were placed somewhere else during this time. These stones are yet another impressive thing about Stonehenge. They were dressed to last longer and had mortise and tension joints carved into the tops. This was all again done with primitive tools. Other civilizations would not master such techniques for thousands of years in wood, never mind stone. These stones were also prepared with a final vision in mind. When viewed from the ground, they'd have a slightly circular shape. Each side of the stone was also worked differently to add to this effect. 75 sarsen stones were needed to complete this circle fully, and it was thought for many years that this was never completed. This changed, however, in 2013, when a dry summer revealed the patches of grass which corresponded to the location of removed sarsen stones. It's unknown where these stones went or why they were removed. There were 5 triflons made up of sarsen stones, of which only one remains standing to this day. The last of these has also sunk into the ground by a whopping 8 feet, with only 22 feet able to be seen from above. Carvings of daggers and axes have been carved into these stones, which were added in the Bronze Age. Around 2600 and 2400 BC, as many as 4,000 people would travel to Stonehenge for the midwinter and midsummer festivals. Animals were also brought to be slaughtered here from across the whole of the British Isles, some as far away as the Scottish Highlands. Around the same time, a timber circle was constructed in walking distance away that may have acted as part of these festivals. In the Bronze Age, around 2400 BC, the bluestones made their return, but not in the horseshoe shape. Instead, they were placed within the outer sarsen stone circle. They may have also been trimmed down, but this is for an unknown reason. Some suggest that these were not the same bluestones, but different ones altogether, and that they yet again came all the way from Wales. There were also timber cuts in both the blue and sarsen stones, suggesting that they acted as beams for a larger timber or fabric structure. Around 2280 BC, the bluestones were yet again moved. This time they were arranged in a circle between the 2 rings of sarsens, and in an oval centre in the inner ring. The altar stone may have also been moved upright at this time. Although this would have taken a huge amount of work and effort, Stonehenge Phase 3D was not as fine-tuned as its predecessors. For example, some of the bluestones fell over time as they was not properly grounded. In 1930 BC, the northeastern section of the bluestones just introduced were yet again removed, again creating a horseshoe shape with the bluestones. Around 1600 BC, some new holes were dug, these now named X and Y holes. This was the last modification made to Stonehenge by Briton tribes. There were 60 of these new X and Y holes that were added. The altar stone may have also been placed back down, if it was ever placed upright in the first place, or it may have fallen over time. To date, 2021, only half of these X and Y holes have been excavated. Richard Atkinson suggests that these new holes were used for timber poles, but could have been yet another placeholder for more bluestones. Roman coins and medieval artifacts have been found around Stonehenge, suggesting it was still in use for centuries after its last construction phase. However, no one knows what for. A 17th century Saxon man was excavated from Stonehenge in 1923, suggesting that some people were still being buried here long after the last construction phase. Be sure to check out my other channel, History Sticks, for the complete, longer and comprehensive video.